Thank you so much for that contribution to get us revved up with the super sticker. And we also have Falconer TRX, of course. Tackling improved, but needs work.
I mean, there was points sometimes last year, like you could see not the greatest tackling, but again, like no game's gonna be perfect. But we've definitely come a long way from 2021 Manny Diaz, where that was probably one of the worst tackling teams of all time. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, where it was just every week. Now every week it's them mentioning on the broadcast Mario's game management. Back then it was this Miami team. They can't tackle. They can't seem to wrap up and really bring anyone down. But I have no doubt that the defense will continue to improve under Lance Guidry. This last season, I would really only give him 2 stinkers, and that was Louisville and North Carolina. But even then, we've come a long way from 700 yards against the Tar Heels with 500 yards rushing. But,
Yeah, that's kind of the classic example right there.
Yeah.
That is the classic example right there. I'll ask you this as well, because I saw a Facebook post today, because I belong to about 50 college football groups just so I can promote the show. So about 3 or 4 or 5 are Miami groups. I go in there. Somebody had posted the schedule and was basically saying, this is a cakewalk. We're going to win 11 or 12 games. And then, of course, there were several hundred comments, and I just kind of glanced through them, and you can definitely sort out the people that are reasonable versus the other fans. So how optimistically do you look at next season, knowing that there is a talent advantage almost every game, but there is just about every season?
Yeah, I mean, no one really in the country can say has done less with more than Miami in terms of the talent that we have and the weak schedule that we like to say we play. But, we've been 500 almost every year since 2004, hovering around that 7-5 mark seemingly every year. But when you look at the quarterback, you look at the O-line, running back is deep. We have 2 of the most productive receivers in the ACC coming back, which, well, maybe just one. We have to see what happens with Jacoby George and his situation. Where I don't know if you're aware, but he got arrested for racing down here in Miami. And
I did not hear that. When did that happen? Or at least
the same day that Cam Ward announced, actually, I think. Just funny how that works. So Saturday. So we'll see what happens with that. We all know he'd had some trouble on the field at the end of last year with the personal fouls at the end of games and sort of being a hothead, which just isn't acceptable. But when you look at what we're bringing back defensively and offensively and who we're also bringing in, and then the schedule, I don't think it's unreasonable to think we win 10 games, but there's nothing guaranteed. I mean, that's why you have to play the games. A lot of people said before the ACC championship, I know Miami fans aren't going to be happy with me bringing up this example, but a lot of people, myself included, said Louisville's going to wipe the floor with FSU. It's guaranteed. Like, a lot of people just said it like, we're not even going to really bother watching that game. Outside of FSU fans, like, Louisville's going to wipe the floor with them. Their defense, like, it's good, but they're not going to be able to overcome the offensive struggles that they're going to have without Jordan Travis and starting a third-string quarterback. And they won that game, and it's why you have to play the games. A lot of people would have thought 99 times out of 100 we beat Georgia Tech last year, but we didn't. Sure, it was because of stupid circumstances, but we didn't. It's a loss. When you look at the win-loss column, it counts as a loss. So, I mean, there's predictions and expectations and optimism, but at the end of the day, we have to play the game. And my goals for the year are, yes, win 10 games and beat Florida and FSU because they're both on the schedule this year, and it can happen, but I'm not going to outright predict it or guarantee it as a certainty. I'm just cautiously optimistic, and I emphasize cautiously because for my whole lifetime, this team hasn't really done anything.
Yeah, you bring up Georgia Tech, and I know that's kind of painful, but I was doing postseason rankings, and I finally got around to it because I'll release a top 25 right after each weekend immediately. But at the end of the season, do everyone 1 through 133. So that obviously, and I take it seriously. I'm just not throwing out rankings. So I'm looking at schedules, I'm looking at performance, I'm looking at margins of victory and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I hit Georgia Tech and I hit Miami. Well, they both finished 7-6, but I got to give the nod technically to Georgia Tech. They play in the same conference. They won the head-to-head, and it just kind of pointed out to me that even though, in a sense, it didn't affect Miami's season, unless you care about 8-5 versus 7-6, they would have gone to a different bowl game. Who knows? They might have won that game, but most likely in a more difficult bowl game, they probably lose again. So 8-5, 7-6. But for Georgia Tech, with a program that's trying to get off the deck and make something of themselves, they lose that game. They don't go to a bowl game. They're 5-7. That allowed them to get to a bowl game. They win the bowl game. So they're a 7-6 football team instead of a 5-7 team, just because Miami didn't take a knee. So that helped them a lot more than it hurt Miami.
Yeah.
So Brent Key should probably put Mario on his Christmas list.
I mean, there were so many games this year that, like I said, quarterback play decided it, or just these marginal things. And one that clearly comes to mind is the North Carolina game and turnovers, because we were down, I believe, 7-3, and we drive all the way to the North Carolina 1, and Henry Parrish gets in the end zone, but he fumbles on the 1-inch line. That's 7 points off the board. Tyler Van Dyke throws a terrible pick. Then there's another drive where we're driving down the field and we're almost at we're around midfield, and Matt Lee and Tyler Van Dyke have a miscommunication on snap, and it's a fumble, and North Carolina recovers, and we ended up losing that game by 10 points. And we were up at halftime, but at halftime we could have easily been up 10, 13 points on the road, and that completely changes the ball game. So there was just these sort of things that happened throughout a game, whether it was turnovers or mismanagement or bad quarterback play, that really changed the course of this season. That really hurt us and made it look like we were a lot worse than we were. But I think that's also where some of the optimism comes from, because I would talk about it every week, where at least it wasn't like 2022, where you're getting boat raced by Middle Tennessee, you're getting blown out by Duke, you're getting blown out by Florida State. But it's just in games where it's not even close, and it's like, yeah, there was no way we were going to win that game from the first snap. At least we took a step in the right direction this year. And then now, like I said earlier, you bring in someone of the caliber of Cam Ward, who was graded around a day 2 NFL pick. And he said in an interview with The Athletic that the reason he came back is because he believes he's a day 1 pick, which when you watch him, he certainly has the arm talent and potential for. I feel like he just has to get some more things on tape, and he feels like he can do that in Miami, and especially in Shannon Dawson's system. And I know some people, especially the Florida States and Floridas of the world, are going to bring up, oh, you just paid for him, this and that. And to that I have to say, and all these quarterbacks got paid. DJ Ugalele got paid. Will Howard got paid. Cam Ward got paid. That's just the reality of the world now. It's not like it's illegal or under the table like before. So when people bring up that whole you paid for your players argument, who cares? Okay, we paid for him. Sorry. He's still on the team. He's still going to be playing for us. And we've been investigated twice and they never found anything. Florida State, you just got hit by sanctions, so I don't think you should be talking about illegalities when it comes to NIL.
Yeah. I think most of us would like to see NIL regulated a little bit better.
Oh, for sure.
It happens. Again, I can't really fault anyone. I think everybody's tampering and everybody's getting paid, and that's above board. And the same people that seem to have been for a decade sticking up for the athlete, basically saying this is $1 billion industry and why aren't the athletes getting paid in addition to the scholarship, of course. are now complaining because they're uncomfortable about the amount of money. Well, you can't have it both ways. So the market is determining how much these players are worth, and that's the country we live in and the system we live in. Your value is determined by the market. So
yeah, I mean, like you said, I even as a Miami fan, with a fan of a school that does spend a lot on NIL, would like to see some regulation in it. You know, obviously you can't give like, you know, a salary cap or go as in depth on that, but at least something. And, you know, I'm not the person to come up with those regulations, but at least, you know, regulate it somehow. But still, it's not regulated. And we didn't do anything illegal by paying him. So who cares? Like, that's not a valid argument.
No.
Plus, it's not like we've had like terrible quarterback play. Like last year when Tyler Van Dyke was good, he was as good as anyone in the country. It's just he hit this mental block, and no one really knows what it is. But like I don't know if it was relationship troubles or just a loss of confidence on the field. But that's really what derailed the season. That sort of mental block he had, because there was even games we won in spite of the quarterback play. You know, the Clemson games comes to mind where it wasn't Tyler under center, it was Emory. And I know the fan base has a lot of love for Emory and respect for Emory, and I do as well. But he didn't play great in that game. Sure, he made some big-time throws, but it's not like he carried us to victory. You know, that was a combination of a strong run game and strong defensive performance. And another game is the Virginia game, which Tyler did play in, and I think he threw like 3 interceptions. And, you know, cost him. The offense in that game, I think, only had 1 touchdown. The rest was field goals and a pick 6 by Cam Kinchens. So it's just hopefully everything works out at the quarterback position this year and it's not this big point of concern, especially with all the talent we're going to have surrounding it. And hopefully we look back on Cam Ward coming to Miami as the thing that sort of propelled Miami in a really great upward trajectory. But I do fully expect an improvement this year because we did improve so much from 2023 to 22.